All right, today we're diving into a really powerful idea, one that comes from our source material and might just explain that common modern feeling of restlessness. We're going to try and solve the puzzle of what are called surrogate activities.
I mean, have you ever had this feeling? You're always on the move, you're working, you're getting things done, but there's this little nagging voice in the back of your head saying something's missing. That question right there, that's the mystery we're unpacking today.
So, the source material we're looking at actually gives this feeling a pretty specific name. It calls it middle class vacuity. It's this weird sense of purposelessness that can pop up even when all our basic needs, food, shelter, safety, are totally taken care of. So, what's really going on here? Well, the core argument is this. Modern life has created this huge mismatch. See, we evolved for struggle, for challenge, but now getting what we need to survive just requires, well, minimal effort. And that leaves our deep core psychological drives kind of unemployed. They're all revved up with nowhere to go. And that leads us straight to the cause of that emptiness. The source introduces this really fundamental concept to explain it all, something it calls the power process. Let's break down exactly what that means. Okay, so think of the power process as our psychological engine. According to the source, every single one of us has this deep, deep need to go through this cycle. You gotta have a goal, you gotta work towards it on your own terms, and then you finally get to achieve it. When that engine stalls, that's when we start to feel that modern emptiness. It's actually pretty simple when you lay it out like this, right? Goal, effort, attainment. The problem is, when survival gets easy, the real goals aren't obvious anymore. The effort we put in doesn't always feel truly ours, and so the attainment can feel, well, hollow. And that disruption sets the stage for our next big idea. So, if our natural power process is stalled out, what on earth does the mind do? It gets creative. It invents a kind of phantom solution. It starts creating new, artificial goals, just to give that psychological engine something to burn.
And here it is, the crucial definition, a surrogate activity. Now, the key insight here is that the artificial goal itself, whether it's, climbing a mountain or getting a promotion, that's not really the point. The real reward is the feeling of pursuit itself. It's the fulfillment we get from just having a goal to chase.
And wow, look at this list from the source. This just shows how common these things are. It covers pretty much every part of modern life. You've got the scientist in the lab, the athlete on the track, the executive trying to climb the corporate ladder, the artist, even the activist fighting for a cause that doesn't directly affect them. Do you see any of your own pursuits on this list? Okay, so the source gives us this fascinating little thought experiment, a rule of thumb to test this for yourself. Think about one of your big goals right now. Got it? Now, imagine you had to spend all your time just surviving, finding food, building shelter. Would you feel a deep, profound sense of loss because you couldn't pursue that goal? And there's the punchline. If your answer is no, if, the demands of survival would totally eclipse your desire for that goal, then the source argues it is very, very likely a surrogate activity, something you do for the feeling of the process, not for the goal itself. But, okay, this leads to a huge problem. If these activities are our solution, why do they so often leave us feeling like we're just on a treadmill? Why doesn't the fulfillment ever seem to last? This quote from the source just nails it. Never satisfied, never at rest. The person chasing money always needs more. The marathon runner always needs a longer race. The scientist solves one puzzle and immediately feels that itch to find another one. It's just this endless cycle of temporary satisfaction. So why? Well, the source points to a few key reasons. First, these artificial goals are just less satisfying than what it calls real goals. Things tied to our actual survival. Second, even when we feel like we're in charge, our effort is usually still boxed in by the rules of the system. And finally, the whole thing can feel a bit empty, precisely because that fundamental biological need to survive has been made so trivial. Okay, now this is where the whole argument takes this fascinating, almost sinister turn. What if this whole system of surrogate activities, what if it isn't a bug in modern life? What if it's actually a feature? What if it's the secret fuel that keeps the entire industrial technological system running? According to our source material, science and technology are the ultimate surrogate activities. The argument goes that scientists and engineers aren't just motivated by some noble desire to help humanity. No, they're motivated by the intense,
personal fulfillment they get from solving a hard problem, from completing their own power process. And that personal need, when you multiply it by millions, is what drives the whole system forward, blindly and relentlessly. So let's just put it side by side to make it crystal clear. The source defines real goals as things that give you control over the basic life and death issues of your own existence. On the other hand, artificial goals are the ones we invent to get that feeling of fulfillment when all those real challenges are gone. And this is a very specific and, I should note, very pointed claim from the source material. It suggests that when an activist's own survival isn't actually on the line, the struggle itself can become the reward. The fulfillment comes from being part of the movement, which, by the source's own definition, would classify it as a really powerful surrogate activity. So we end up right where we started, but with a completely new lens to look through. As you look at your own life, your ambitions, your hobbies, the things that get you out of bed in the morning, which are which? Are your goals real or are they surrogate? That's the powerful question this idea leaves us to think about. Thanks for tuning in.